This 2005 Aprilia RS125 was my dream bike when I was 16 because it's fast, beautiful, and doesn't kill the planet as much as mining for lithium to make batteries does. Okay, maybe that last one is up for debate because it's also a two-stroke. But even after riding it for just 2 weeks, I've already found a few of its quirks. Like a snapped clutch cable, I'm not sure if the power valve is working correctly, the frame could be shinier, and apparently the oil pumps on these are known to fail. So today we're going to go over all those issues. And if everything goes smoothly, we'll take it for a ride, where I'm sure we'll find the next set of issues. You're not going to believe this, but I'm just trying to head home and it won't crank over. Kill switch is on. Ignition's on, it's got battery. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but let's see if I can get to the starter motor wires. I think it was on this side, wasn't it? Oh, I hate fairings. Oh, it's everywhere. It was running like 5 minutes ago. This isn't a problem it's given me before. I can't see shit with those fairings on. Gotta be the starter motor. Either that or just the wires to it, or the wires from the starter button. What a bizarre motorbike. Why won't it crank? Come on. Do something. Weird how this isn't the first time I've pushed this bike around. Times like these, I'm glad it doesn't weigh much. Down the hill we go, I guess. There we go. That's all we needed. Okay. I'll see you guys when we fix that, I guess. I know none of you are surprised that my old Italian two-stroke has a few issues, but that's part of the fun of owning one of these, right? If you watched the main video I made about this bike, you'll have seen that I took it to the track, only to complete half a lap before the throttle cable snapped and I had to call it a day. That was easy to fix. It was back up and running the very next day, and I continued to ride it to finish filming with it. However, while riding to film these sexy smooth shots, I looked down and noticed that the clutch cable was starting to fray. So I avoided using it as much as possible and fortunately made it about 90% of the way home before that snapped as well. So that is objective number 1. I also wanted to thank you guys for your support on that video. It often seems like you need the newest, fastest, or most expensive motorcycle for anyone to be interested on YouTube. So the fact that my old, cheap, and tiny 125 convinced over 400 people to share their stories of two-strokes in the comments was absolutely awesome to read. As you can see, I've already removed one side fairing because I've been putting off replacing the clutch cable for weeks. The bottom end of the cable appears to go into the clutch cover as opposed to most logical bikes where it's located on the outside and is easy to get to. I bought some gasket maker in preparation since that's what is already on there because I assume gaskets for these are hard to find. But fortunately that wasn't necessary. I watched a how-to video last minute which gave me an easier approach. The end of the cable is accessible through the oil filler cap. It's not as easy or as fast as I'm making it look, but still better than removing the engine cover, I guess. So now it's at least rideable again, which is cool. But I think while we have the side fairing off, it's worth having a look to see if the power valve is opening and closing correctly, because this bike is gutless down low. I mean, struggles to pull off up a hill kind of gutless, and I'm not that heavy. A few people mentioned that although you should have to rev it like mad since it's a two-stroke, it still shouldn't be quite that bad. However, it is hard to tell the performance on camera. Naturally, I had the wrong side fairing off, but fortunately, there is a lot of information out there about these power valves. Apparently, the solenoid is supposed to pull this cable, which opens and closes the power valve at different RPMs, which surprisingly, mine is doing. The valve itself could still be stuck though, so I took it out and everything appeared to be fine. So I guess that means it's just slow. But slow I can live with. Knowing that everything is functioning properly and in good working order at least gives me peace of mind. To be fair, I haven't ridden a 125 in about 6 years, not since I was probably 19, and I've never ridden a two-stroke 125, so I had no idea what to expect. But it would seem that the problem is me and not the bike, which is a relief. And then we have to talk about the source of that nice aroma, the burning of two-stroke oil. I was impressed by the fact that this bike has an oil reservoir under the rider's seat and will mix your fuel and oil together for you. But obviously, that requires an oil pump, which apparently is famous for failing. And if there's no oil going into the cylinder, it's only a matter of time before the piston seizes or at least does some damage. This is actually something I was very scared of, even before I heard all the horror stories. But my technique was to keep looking behind me, and I figured as long as it was smoking, it was still getting oil. It seems that a lot of owners convert their bikes to premix, meaning they remove the oil reservoir under the seat, they remove the oil pump, and then will manually mix their oil with their fuel and pour it into the tank like that, just like you'd be used to doing with two-stroke dirt bikes, for example. But after researching it a bit, I've decided not to do that for a few reasons. Firstly, I'm not going to be keeping this bike forever, and I'd like to keep it as close to original as possible because I believe that is what makes it so special. Secondly, it sounds like the amount of oil that it injects into the cylinder varies at different RPMs. So if you were to choose a premix ratio of say 32:1, it would be constant throughout the rev range and mean you'd most likely have to rejet it. Most importantly, it also sounds like it will still inject oil into the cylinder at high RPMs even when the throttle is closed to keep things lubricated. So if you were to run premix, you'd have to be very careful not to engine brake too much. And lastly, mixing premix at the track is easy. But if you were to daily ride this, carrying a tin of two-stroke oil around everywhere you go is kind of a pain in the ass. So chances are, even if I were to keep this forever, I still wouldn't convert it to premix. But that's just my opinion, and I'm happy to be wrong. And speaking of keeping this bike original, I think this frame and swing arm could do with a bit of elbow grease. I bought some generic metal polish that I'm hoping livens up the dull metal. I just applied some polish, let it sit for a few minutes, and then buffed it off with a microfiber cloth. I've never had a polished frame on a bike before, so I was interested to see how well this would work. It was, however, the least fiddly and cleanest job I'd had all day, which was a nice change. And that was my last chore for the day. Which means, now comes the fun part. The rule is that if your Aprilia is running, you have to ride it, because it probably won't last long.
It feels so good to be back on this little thing. You instantly feel like a GP racer, and it's even treating us today. We even have the temperature gauge working. Now that does not happen often. I am a little bit scared though, because the last time I rode this, the clutch cable snapped, and the time before that, my throttle cable snapped. And the oil pump runs on a cable, as does the power valve. So I don't know why they relied so heavily on cables when clearly they're not really up to scratch. Well, not when they're 20 years old, I guess. We got more horsepower than him. That's all that counts. I don't know if it's my imagination or if I really did loosen up the power valve, but it feels a bit stronger than I remember. Now that's a noise. We gotta do the obligatory "are we still smoking" check. I think so, hard to tell. Piston's still going up and down by the sounds of things, so I think that's a good sign. She's definitely more frisky off the bottom. Maybe it was just clogged, it hadn't moved in a while. That simple taking the valve out and putting it back in did the trick. Who knows? Okay, we're almost going to be unleashed here. I'm ready, I'm as close to the power band as you can get. Putting a lot of faith in the brakes today. But I mean, what could possibly fail you on an Aprilia, right? Oh, being in second doesn't help. So fast the wind closed my visor for me. What a bike. The two-stroke era really was a simpler time. Okay, so that's the ride part of the coffee ride done. Now we're just in need of some coffee, which they make decent coffee here. So I think we're going to stop here. It wasn't the longest ride, but it's perfect for a 125. I don't want to take a 125 too far because they're not the fastest or most capable unless you're 16, and in that case you think your 125 can ride to the end of the world because it's all you know. And secondly, it's an Italian two-stroke. It's probably not going to get very far anyway before the next issue comes, because it's not if it's going to break, it's when. That is a fun way to get around. I don't really need caffeine after riding this little two-stroke. The power band is your caffeine. We can't lock the steering, but I mean, let's be honest, if somebody wants this, they'll just pick it up and take it because it doesn't weigh anything. The one thing I always forget is to turn the fuel off. I'll probably forget to turn it back on, but that's an issue for when I leave. And that's that. The frame is looking spectacular out in the sun. It's really sparkling. You can see even my rough job made a difference. You can see the shape of it a lot better. Now I get to have an Italian coffee with my Italian motorcycle, mostly because I thought a pizza would be too messy out here. But it feels good to have the Aprilia back on the road. It looks way better out here than in the workshop. And fortunately, that clutch cable was a much easier fix than I expected. So it's running a little bit better, it looks a little bit better. So overall, it's a good day. I'm slowly coming to terms with how the Aprilia functions. And with that said, I'm sure the next thing is going to break imminently. So if this video is uploaded, you know I made it home without another fault. But I'll see you on the next ride. You're not going to believe this,